What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Formula America podcast. We are your hosts, Kurt and Dylan, and we're just coming off of the final race before the summer break, and a race that, other than kind of the very end of it, was pretty boring, I think, if you ask me. But what a dramatic ending, filled with heartbreak, tears, and just, my goodness, man, what a wild ending to this race.
It was like, I was riveted to it the whole time, just like where, all the different, there's so many different strategies with pit stops and tires and speculation and, all over, the top 8 or 9, there was cars, passing and moving. And is this guy going to pass? And he's got DRS again. Now we're in a DRS train. Like, that was really interesting. But also I was sitting there like, can something happen? Like,
right.
Give me a safety car.
For a track that is, a lot of people say like, oh, it's so easy to pass here. That's why people take engine penalties and all that kind of stuff. There really wasn't much. There was just a couple DRS trains that were just driving around the track. And everybody was doing their passing in the pits, or if you're George Russell, not taking pits.
Yeah.
And just running those tires
what a
super
call.
long.
That is a long 34 laps that he ran. Those hard, or 33 laps, I believe, but still over 30 laps that he ran those hard tires.
And what a ballsy call too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he made the call. He totally deserved it. I'm kind of surprised the team let him, but his lap times were still good. He was saying the tires feel great. Like, kind of kudos to Mercedes for taking the gamble, and it paid off. Well, it didn't, but it did, for the first 10 minutes after the race. So, like, because, if that was Ferrari or even Red Bull or one of those, and they were like, I want to go long, they'd be like, that's cute. Anyway, box.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's funny to see, like, some teams will do that. They don't really take into account what the driver has to say, and other teams they will. And I've even noticed it with drivers too. Like, I think if Max is like, well, Max is going to do what Max wants to do anyways. But there's some drivers on the teams that normally get a little bit more of that respect. Generally, I think if Lewis would have say something like that, they would normally listen to Lewis, or at least take it into account.
Yeah.
But that was another part of seeing how upset Lewis was that he wasn't afforded that opportunity. Lewis was pissed.
He was spicy. That was pretty entertaining. Like, the interview afterwards, you could he felt robbed. And I think in the time when he's actually competitive after so long of not being, he is hungry for those wins. We talked about it, I think, last year at one point. I was like, it feels like George Russell's hungrier than Lewis is. We got a whole bunch of flack on Instagram for saying that. I was like, I'm not saying George is a better driver. I'm saying he's hungrier. Now it's like Lewis is hungry again, and it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we wanted, was that little spark in Lewis. Because last year it was so long, so many years of him just getting beat down, the team not being there. You hear all the turmoil going on behind the scenes where he said they weren't listening to him. And now that they've actually fixed their freaking car, they're able to start fighting for wins again. And you could tell, you see that predator start to come back out of Lewis. And it's so awesome to see. He's finally
such a good driver. He's so fun to watch.
Which for me, it was so surprising. What the last 10 to 15 laps of the race was like edge of the seat for me. Before that, I, wasn't that exciting as far as I was concerned. But the last 10 to 15 laps, when you're watching that gap come down from Lewis to George, and I'm like, there's no way George is going to be able to hold him off. Lewis is going to sail right by him. But George was able to put the car in positions where Lewis couldn't do anything. And then he was getting a run out of that turn right before they go up to Eau Rouge. He was getting a run out of there where Lewis just could not catch up to him or keep up with him in that turn.
I kept on watching the split interval, and they'd come around the backside of that track, and Lewis would get it down to like 0.3. I'd be like, here we go. And then all of a sudden it'd go back to 0.5, and then he'd run it down in a certain area. It was like they each were dominant in certain areas, even though he was on such old tires, he was still having good traction. Like, every time Lewis brought that down to 0.3, I was like, this time it's, he's going to get it. And then all of a sudden he'd go back to 0.5. I was like, I don't know what Russell's doing, but he's doing it. Like, I think awesome.
Russell has, I've made no mistake about it. Like, I haven't been a big George Russell supporter or fan, right? But I respect the hustle.
Yes.
And I realize the kid's got some talent, and that's the reason why he got that seat. And I think for a while there, people were kind of questioning if he was going to be able to lead that team. And I think especially the past few races, he's stepped up, and I think he's really laid his claim to be like, look, once Lewis is out of here, this is my team. Like, I am the leader of this team. You can bring in Antonelli or whoever you want, but he's actually like laid it out. He's like, look, this is me. And I think he's doing a great job right now.
He is. Same thing. I'm not a big George Russell fan, but guy's a hell of a driver for sure. He's just not my favorite personality. But yeah, I'm excited for him. He's still young, right? Like I think that's a lot of, is he going to be able to lead this team? Like he's clearly got the talent. He's absolutely got the potential to be a future world champion. But he's still young. He still kind of makes young guy mistakes. He's still not as consistent as he needs to be. And I think in a couple more years, he'll be vying for the championship.
Yeah, for sure, man. So from Mercedes, who absolute masterclass this weekend.
I was about to say masterclass.
We won't go that far since we have had a little bit of peek into the future of what happens, but absolute masterclass as far as pace, strategy, maybe not so much following the rules.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, we had McLaren, who for one, we got Oscar Piastri, did a great job this weekend.
He loved to dip that back tire in the gravel pit. I can't believe that didn't call him out harder. But I mean, he dipped that tire in there like 4 or 5 times. It's like, bro, you're really flirting with
He's like right on the ragged edge. It's like, it's not going to take much for you to completely put that thing off the track. But man, and we've always talked about with Oscar where it seems like he's having an issue or his biggest issue has been tire management.
Yeah.
And I think that, these last couple races where you've had like multiple stop races, I feel like it's not really come into play as much because, you're not having to really take the tires super long. And he's just really had a great day yesterday. I thought Oscar did amazing.
Oh, I did too. I mean, he was on the podium either way, but ended up P2 and totally on merit. He did a great job. I got to be honest, and this is going to prickle you. I know it is, but honest opinion here. I'm kind of getting sick of Lando's emotional BS. Like he didn't have a great race. He lost out in that first turn on lap 1. And then, the cars were also evenly matched. It just didn't really go his way. And he was such a big, like almost a baby about it in the commentary afterwards. And it's like, Lando, like, God dog, he's emotional.
Yeah. And man, I'm right there with you. I'm a huge Lando fan, but I'm the same way. And that's why I gave him a 0 a couple weeks ago. Because I forget which race it was, but he was on the podium and he was just like, you could see it on his face. And then I think it was last week. I was like, I feel like he made a complete turnaround after the whole like debacle with the McLaren strategy. But then this weekend you see it again. Like he's upset and he's just really letting it show. And I get it. There's a lot of emotion involved, but yeah, he's just like super emotional, almost to the point where it's kind of annoying when you see it after the races. But I've said it multiple times. Lando's the biggest chink in his armor is he is terrible at starts.
Yeah,
especially when he starts from the front. But my God, even yesterday, that start, like I guess cold tires. He kind of overcooked it going into turn 1 and kind of washed out. I thought Oscar pushed him at first until you see the replay, and Lando did that all on his own.
I didn't even think anyone was all that close to him.
No, not at all. He had to do, well, not all he had to do, but his biggest objective, I think, for the start of this race was to make sure that he maintained that space to Max.
Yep.
And, because Max was starting in P11 and he comes out and immediately drops down to almost in Max's clutches. Max gained a few spots. Lando dropped back and they're separated by 2 cars, which didn't take Max long to get past those cars. But what a terrible start he had yesterday. This is kind of getting ridiculous.
It is. And it's like, that's one of those, like, you've been in the sport long enough. That's not like, Piastri figuring out how to manage the tires a little bit more. I get it's your second season. I get that. Totally fair. You've got time to learn that. But starting your car is all right, Lando. Like, come on, bud.
you do it every race. Like, get it together a little bit.
So I have heard, and this isn't an excuse for Lando, but I just think this is really interesting. You and I both being big manual car fans. I've heard one of the hardest things about starting the race, starting the car, is they have a clutch pedal that they hold on the steering wheel, and that releases obviously the clutch when they let it out, but it's electronic and it just has a spring. So, when you like push your clutch in your car, you kind of know right where that feeling is, that where it will engage and disengage. There's none of that. It's just a spring it's just a lever on the steering wheel. And I'm like, that would be kind of weird to try and start, not slip the tires, and there's no tactile feel to the clutch grabbing. Like I think that's kind of such a cool little piece of it where I'm like, that would be strange. I kind of want to try it and feel it. And yeah.
I'd like to see what it's like. All I know is every time I do the F1 game on, Xbox or whatever, even if I'm in a sim rig, I cannot start for crap.
No.
I always spin out. I always wind up last place from the start. So if it's anything like that, then okay, hats off. But I don't know if it's like, completely that difficult.
But I mean, McLaren had a good car this weekend. Again, just showing that they've got, they can't say they're the fastest car this weekend. That's for sure. I think Mercedes kind of very well stole that, which I think was a bit of a surprise to everyone.
A big surprise.
But
I think going into the weekend, even after Friday, a lot of people were pegging McLaren as the ones to beat.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody had Mercedes on top of that list.
No.
And it was interesting. I think there was a shift throughout the weekend. You got to see Friday. I think McLaren had the pace. Saturday, Red Bull had the pace because they went kind of against convention. Everybody went low downforce, small rear wings. Red Bull's like, we're going to go more downforce. We're going to really dominate the second sector of the track. And that really helped them out when the track was wet during quali because they had more traction. So they were the fastest on Saturday. And then Sunday, out of nowhere, you got Mercedes coming out. So it was kind of interesting to see. It was tough to judge throughout this weekend.
It really was. So good on them. Good on McLaren. All right, let's talk about Red Bull. Let's talk about Sergio.
Oh, Red Bull. God damn it. I'm really... Sergio came out and he said he had his interview. He's like, I'm getting tired of answering these questions. I will not talk about it anymore. I'm getting tired of talking about him at this point.
I am too. I'm like, what a great Saturday qualifying. He almost went out in Q1, which I was kind of find entertaining if that happened at this point. But he didn't. And then, put it on the front row, great job. Here's your opportunity to make a claim to your Red Bull seat, like win the race. You're in P2, or at least just be on the podium. Like, it's don't fall back to P8 while Max comes up from P11 and makes it by you, man. Like, you didn't have to do awesome. You just had to not suck.
Yeah. Helmut Marko, I think he said he completely collapsed this weekend, which, man, and I know Saturday, I give him kudos for what he did on Saturday.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know the Checo Perez pucker factor on Saturday was like maxed out because it was basically on a razor thin margin because he had to go fast enough that he performed well. But then again, he also couldn't push it too hard that he crashed it because, again, he had to perform well. Yes. Everything's on the line. So his margins were so thin.
And he crushed it.
And he held it. He did it. He held it together.
Like, man.
And then, like you said, man, Sunday came and it's just like, what's going on? He's just falling back.
He finished 24 seconds behind Carlos Sainz.
Man. Not ideal.
Yeah, I hope he enjoyed his last race.
Not the and even I texted you those pictures. I took some screenshots of the post-race interviews, and it was Danny Ricciardo was extremely happy, and I was like, he's way too happy for a P10 and P11 at the time.
P11 at the time, yeah.
And then you saw Checo's post-race interview, and it was just like a look of defeat. And then you're seeing all the post-race pictures of Danny Ricciardo meeting on the rooftop with Christian Horner and Laurent Mekies, and hearing other rumors about how it's going to come down to a shootout between Danny and Liam at Imola later this week when they get to test out the car there. And it's just, the writing's on the wall. Everybody sees it. Everybody knows what's going on. Red Bull's even farther back in the constructors now, so it's time.
It's time.
But on the other side, we had Max Verstappen, who did a pretty damn good job, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, he did. I mean,
for a car that wasn't supposed to be the fastest, they actually did really well. Qualified P1 on merit, and then did pretty well.
Which is what I said and why I put him on pole. When it comes to having cojones big enough to go around Spa in the wet, I trust Max to do it. And sure enough, he did it. It was great.
He did it.
But yeah, Max did a good job. Side note about Max, which I think is funny. It came out last week, like Thursday or Friday, is after we had done the preview pod already. That the FOM, the FIA, and Formula One itself were upset about all the swearing from Max in Hungary. And that wasn't good for the sport. That doesn't look good. And someone was like, the FOM is the ones complaining about this, right? And they're like, yes. And he was like, aren't they the ones that control what radios are put on the TV? They're like, yes. So we're complaining. That would be like you and me making a shit podcast, listening to the shit podcast, and then saying, post it, and then let's post about how we're angry about it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, what?
I mean, all you have to do is just not play it, because 99% of people that watch it don't watch the onboards of the drivers.
No.
They're just watching the regular broadcast. So you're putting it up there. And then not only are they putting it up there, but they're going and they're posting it. They're making these cool little catchy graphics and, little videos on Instagram and posting it again.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I like it. Especially when it comes from somebody like Max. I think Yuki's hilarious when he goes off on the radios, but it's just like, they're passionate. They're in the moment, and I kind of like to hear it. So,
and there's, the drivers have talked about it on repeat. I think everyone's heard it from somebody at some point, but they're like, it's kind of unfair that there's a mic, present for that is broadcasted. I guarantee if you put mic in football player helmets or any other sport, there's not nice words coming out.
Yeah. Not everybody is like George Russell. And it's like, oh gosh, golly.
Oh, bloody Nora.
Didn't he say yabba dabba doo?
I think he did at one point
when he won his last race.
Freaking George. God, dog.
And that's why I can't get behind it.
I can't either.
Also, what I thought was funny was how Max came out, and we talked about last week how they said that Max would no longer be late night sim racing. And I thought it was hilarious that he came out and he was like, yeah, I just told him that because there's no more late night sim races this season.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't tell them what to do on their weekends. They can't tell me. Oh, it was like the most Max response ever.
Yes. All right. I got one funny point from Saturday that I thought was awesome. And then I said, let's do our heroes and zeros.
Let's go.
They were talking about Lance Stroll, or it was from Friday when he put it in the wall. And the F1 commentator, was that Saturday? Whenever he put it in the wall.
Saturday.
It was last practice. Yeah.
I think.
And yeah, because it was raining and they said, wow, I can't really do that. Lance Stroll's usually a really good driver, especially in the rain. I was like, who did Lawrence just pay? He's never a good driver, especially in the rain. Who is paying?
Oh, look, I will say Lance has had one or two really good performances in the rain. And I think since then, everybody's kind of clung on to it. It's like, well, he didn't mess up that time.
Yeah. It's like saying Logan Sargent's a good driver because he didn't crash it this weekend. Did he score any points, though? No.
Yeah. Rip Logan Sargent's career now that Sainz has been confirmed at Williams.
Yeah. I think we all saw that one coming.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do heroes and zeros?
Let's do it. All right. Why don't you start off? I think I started off last time. I don't remember.
All right. Zeros. I hope it's the last time I'll ever have to say this. I truly do. But Checo Perez. Moving on.
Yeah.
I think that horse is dead and beaten. Man, I've got him here and on my heroes list. George Russell. What a great job. Across the board, he absolutely deserves to be a hero. What a sucky way for it to go after the fact. Disqualified by 1.5 kilograms, which someone did an analysis. You know how they tell him to drive on the dirty side of the track on the in lap so that it picks up all that rubber. Someone actually went and did the math and said that weighs almost per tire 400 grams. which on all 4 tires would have been 1.5 kilograms. But because the lap is so long, they made him just flip it around and hop through on the pit lane. And so they never like drove around and picked all that up. I don't think your plan should be to make weight with that, but it kind of just is awful that you got disqualified on your 3rd race win. Like maybe I should have Russell on there. Mercedes. Yeah. Come on, guys.
Well, you know what's interesting about that? Actually, Damon Hill tweeted something out earlier saying the same thing, and how teams will add that into their calculations to make sure that they make weight. But also, you race here every year, you know you're not going to do a complete lap. So you should have in your calculations to bump the weight up already. But yeah, it's just the heartache to see to go back and watch the post-race interviews where he was so elated and so happy.
Yes.
Knowing what's about to come. It sucks to see. You know, I like I said, not my favorite driver, but I feel for the guy. He earned it. He definitely earned it. And I hope Mercedes still pays him his race win bonus for this.
I hope so too. And then the last one I got is Lando Norris. I'm sick of the whiny, crying emotions. And bro, learn how to start a race. I mean, otherwise he did fine the whole race. If you just didn't botch the first corner, probably would have been on the podium. But yeah, those are my 3.
So my zeros list looks exactly like yours, except for I added 1 alternate. So I am not.
There wasn't a whole lot of zeros. Like I was kind of struggling on this one a little bit.
Yeah, so mine, I had Checo, Lando, Merc for sure for the same reasons, which now caveat, Lando is now 78 points behind Max in the championship with only 10 races left. So still not a big difference, but this weekend he could have made up some of that spread.
Yeah, he could have.
So my 1 alternate that I had, which I think he still kind of deserves a 0 on this. And you and I text about it during the race, but Logan Sargent, like I know I don't expect him to do much, but every time you look at it, he's either in P19, P20, or unless the DNF like this weekend, but he's just always so low. And it's just like, just do something, man. I want to see you go out with a bang. You got 10 races left.
I want to find that meme where the dude has the stick and it's like, do something. It's like that's where we're at. I texted you in the race and was like, what is he even doing? Yeah. Why is he already 30 seconds off the pace? Like, what is going on with this dude?
I really hope that we have one absolutely wild, crazy race and he winds up, top 5 for some reason, just at the very end. And he gets to go out with that kind of bang. But yeah, Logan Sargent would be my only other 0.
That's fair. All right, who are your heroes?
All right, heroes. Kind of like you. We have Mercedes on the zeros list. I also have Mercedes on my heroes list. They came to play this weekend. They fixed their freaking car. They came out when Piastri got past was it Leclerc? Yeah, Piastri got past Leclerc. He was 5.5 seconds, I think, behind the Mercedes. Yeah. And so if the 2 Mercedes weren't caught in the dogfight themselves, that gap probably would have been pretty big. So I mean, they actually had a really fast car. And so I got to give it to them.
And it didn't blow their tires off. I mean,
true.
The fact that you're able to do a 1-stopper, that's an efficient car. And it was hot. It was hot on Sunday out there. Like, good on them.
One thing I found is kind of interesting is now this is 2 races in a row where we've had a team come out of it with a 1-2 victory, but also with a huge black eye on the team. Yeah. And so it was McLaren with their bad strategy last time, and this time Mercedes with their overweight car, and also their issues with Lewis. But my second hero is going to be Charles Leclerc, who has come back from just being beat up and beat down since Monaco, and he actually did really well. He qualified P2 on merit, on pure pace, and now he finished P3 in the race. So
he did. I think he got like 60 seconds of screen time, just nothing from him. But
not much.
But it was awesome. Did a great job.
Good on him. He inherited both pole position and a podium this weekend. So good on him. And then my third one, I do want to go ahead and separate him from the team and call him out. But George Russell, man, he really earned it. He deserved it this weekend. Yeah. Gutsy, ballsy call, but good on him.
I totally agree. I've got Russell on there. I'll leave that one as the same because I think he deserves it. I've got two that are like my on the line. I don't know which one I'd really want to go, so I'm just going to say both of them. Fernando Alonso, P8, and Danny Rick, P10. Awesome job. That Aston Martin's not been that fast to have P8 be right behind, the front leaders. Good on you, Fernando. I think he got like 10 seconds of airtime the whole freaking time. Like I looked, I was like, oh wow, Fernando, look at that, P8.
Fernando also on a one-stop strategy as well.
Yep. So Danny Rick was the other one. And then my last one, I got to give it to Piastri's front jack man.
Oh my God.
The real hero that kept Piastri on the podium by taking that hit and still doing his job.
Oh, my guy got booted. Did you see? I'm sure his ribs are completely bruised right now. He was rubbing his neck afterwards. Piastri owes that man a Foster's at the very least. My God.
But that dude took a hell of a hit and didn't miss a beat. I think that Piastri's stop was like 3.5 seconds, 3.4 or something like that. Like
that was a long one.
Nice.
Good,
That he could have fallen over. That would have been a 6-second pit stop at the, in the best case. You're now coming out behind people. You're not passing. Like kudos to that guy.
That Jackman stopped that car.
Yes. Like
Piastri was going through. It reminds me, remember when Lance did that to his Jackman and booted him down the pit lane? Oh my gosh. You don't realize how dangerous of a position that is. You are standing in front of a car that is speeding towards you.
That weighs 800 kilograms and has 1,000 horsepower with a very anxious driver.
And you're just hoping it stops in time. So probably the most dangerous job in the pits. So yeah, good for that. I'm glad you called him out. Good for that guy. Actually, you know what? I would like to give one honorable mention for the heroes now that we're on it. Stake F1 team. Their mechanics pulled off a 1.9 second pit stop on Valtteri Bottas's car.
At one point, I saw Bottas was in P10, and I was like, oh my gosh, are they got to get points? And then he pitted, and I was like, oh, never mind.
So good on them. They went from like a 45-second pit stop at the beginning of the year to now 1.9. So
they were like averaging 10 seconds or something ridiculous. Good call.
The rest of the team sucks, but they did a good job.
But at least those guys are getting it together. All right,
let's do predictions.
I'm pulling up our scores. You almost got a point with Piastri till Mercedes.
I almost got multiple points.
Almost. All right.
Anyways,
going into Belgium, I'm ahead 33-19. On pole, Max Verstappen. Atta boy.
Oh, my pole was George Russell.
Which good call. I'm thinking that George was going to have a good weekend. I mean, he didn't get any points, but it's like saying Lance Armstrong doesn't have any Tour de France's.
This is a Formula One podcast. We're not bringing cycling into this.
On P3, the correct answer was Charles Leclerc. I had Norris.
I had Piastri.
You were close. He was technically P3 for a few minutes.
Yep.
And P2, the correct answer was Oscar Piastri. I had Lewis Hamilton. I was right for that one.
We both had Hamilton there.
And P1, Lewis Hamilton. I had Max.
I had Lando.
What was your wild card?
I had 3 DNS.
Oh, yeah, that definitely didn't happen. I had Yuki Tsunoda points. Why didn't I just say V-carb? I should have said V-carb, and I would have got 2 points off of that.
I like how Yuki in his interview said that for starting in Zandvoort and to finish P16 was a good drive for him. His 60 place grid penalty.
How many points you get total?
I got none. I had 2 points. I was on deck for 2 points until freaking Mercedes screwed up their weights.
34-19. Hell yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to recoup during this break. Yeah, good weekend.
Good weekend going into the break. Let's give it a few days. We got Carlos Sainz definitely going to Williams. I've heard there's some clauses in there that if Red Bull does offer him a seat, that is an out. I've heard a couple of different things. Let's go do some research, and we need some content for later in the week, and we can talk drivers.
Yes, sir. Sounds good to me. All right, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure and leave us a rating and a review, and go ahead and share this podcast with a friend, too. But I think that's going to be it for this recap of the final race of the summer break, unless you got anything else, Dylan.
That's all I got, Kurt.
All right. Well, on that note,
stay classy, America.
We'll see you next time.